Warparty's pitch sounds pretty solid. Take a bunch of cavemen, throw them on dinosaurs, and have whole armies of them slam into each other in some RTS action. This Stone Age dino romp bills itself as an old-school RTS, and it definitely is one. Warparty invokes the spirit of games like Warcraft 3 in almost everything it does, but there's been a question that's been on my mind the entire time I've been playing it. Why am I not just playing Warcraft? As always, I'm Alex, and this is First 5, where I ask if games are worth your time, not your money. I played a game for 5 hours, and I'm going to tell you if those were 5 hours well spent. And today, we're jumping on the back of a Triceratops in Warparty. We've been playing Blizzard-style RTSs for decades now, and if you've played any of those, you've pretty much played Warparty. Blizzard is an obvious inspiration for this game, but it's also one that looms tall over it. And Warparty doesn't seem to have an answer for why I shouldn't just go reinstall StarCraft 2 instead. Because Warparty is technically a good game, but it isn't as polished or entertaining as the games it's emulating. And when you dig into the details, pathing, voice acting, and AI could all use some work.
The enemy is attacking us!
If all Warparty wants to be is a Warcraft clone, its baseline needs to be as polished as the original, and it's just not. And honestly, it would be a little unreasonable to expect it to be. So that means that their best bet is to innovate, except they didn't really do much of that. The biggest differentiation is the window dressing, Stone Age tribes battling it out on the backs of dinosaurs, mammoths, and saber-toothed tigers. Not coincidentally, it's probably Warparty's biggest draw. I love the art direction and the modeling in this game, and who the heck doesn't like the idea of fighting with dinosaurs? On this front, Warparty is a success. But the gameplay itself just feels really safe and bland. It's all technically well executed, but the unique setting doesn't seem to have inspired anything beyond the visuals. The most interesting faction by far is the one that doesn't even use dinosaurs, the Necromos, a group of cultists that raise zombies anytime an enemy dies and can be slotted into literally any fantasy game ever. Cast against them are the Wildlanders, your basic vanilla race of cavemen on dinosaurs that the other two are contrasted with, and the Vithara, who are basically dinosaur night elves. You can already see what I'm talking about when I say the Warparty is kind of bland when you look at how they try to differentiate the different factions. Each one gets its own special bonus that is supposed to adjust how they play. Wildlanders get a passive buff that makes their peasants build faster that I forgot I even had. Vithara get the ability to recruit creeps on the map to their side, something they'll only get to use once or twice a game because of how it works. And the Necromos summon zombies whenever an enemy dies near their hero unit. Speaking of hero units, you might also be used to those from Warcraft, but Warparty's ripped the abilities off the units themselves and put them directly on your toolbars. Most of them are pretty standard stuff. AoE nukes, buffs, a few heals, a few that make buildings work more efficiently, and so on. The one that I had fun with was, again, a Necromos ability that let me summon zombies on command out of the earth. One thing Warparty does well, though, is tying those abilities to a resource called power. You generate power passively over time with buildings you can start making, but you can get even more if you control hills strewn throughout the map, which gives a nice objective in the middle to fight over. Unfortunately, that's about the limit of what Warparty does to set itself apart, as the game's last major differentiating mechanic, the talent system, might be the least imaginative of them all. The game has this system where every time you go up a tech tier, you get a new talent that affects your entire faction. But almost every single talent is just a +5 buff to a particular unit type in your death ball. Of the 18 total talents that you can choose across all 3 of the factions, there was one that interested me. It was the Necromos talent that tripled the cap on how many zombies I could summon. And there's a reason I bring up these 3 very specific examples of what I liked from the Necromos, because they combined to create the one shining moment where I felt like I actually made a meaningful tactical choice in all of these systems. And that was because it actually demonstrably changed how the faction worked. When you combine that talent with the bonus zombies you could create and the few extra you got as enemies died, it actually felt like you were playing the game differently by trying to build this massive horde of squishy disposable units that could shield your core army. And it's not even that big of a change, but at least it's something. Outside of when I was spamming zombies as a Necromos, I could play the game identically as all 3 of the factions. And this is where we finally get to the root of my feelings on Warparty. Never mind trying to differentiate itself from the games it's inspired by, Warparty's own factions struggle to differentiate themselves from each other. Contrast that with something like StarCraft 2, which also has 3 factions, but each faction has as many developed strategies and counter-strategies as there are fucking chess openings. Warparty, in contrast, feels like it has one way to play, and it is the most vanilla way you can play an RTS imaginable. Before we wrap this up, we do have to pause and talk game modes. And here again, everything is technically fine in the broad strokes, shaky in the details, and not particularly compelling. Each faction gets a 6-mission campaign where every level gets a twist that makes it more than just a standard skirmish map. But they're all standard twists we've seen before, and the less said about the threadbare story and cutscenes, the better, probably. There's a survival mode, but here again, there's not much to it. Build an army, sit there, and wait for waves of enemies to slowly ramp up. After about an hour of that, I was so bored that I actually surrendered before the enemy could kill me. The multiplayer skirmish side, ostensibly the standout mode for any RTS, is where Warparty is at its best, but there's only a few dozen people that have even bothered to play a match, so don't expect a big vibrant community to face off against in the months ahead. But this is starting to run long, so let's wrap this up. So what do you get out of 5 hours with Warparty? There's still a ton to do in this game. I've still got a campaign and a half to finish, and multiplayer is something you can keep playing as long as you want. But to be honest, I feel like I've already seen it all, and I don't have any desire to go back and see if the game can prove me wrong. Warparty is, if I had to sum it up, an aggressively okay game. There's nothing wrong with it, the game plays fine. But there's also nothing particularly compelling about Warparty that makes me want to get off my ass and actually play it. Warparty is a fine game, but I also don't see any reason to play this over, say, StarCraft 2 or one of the older Warcrafts. Almost identical games with bigger communities, more expansive and varied tactical options, unique offerings you can't really get anywhere else in the genre, better, more interesting campaigns, and more polish. If you like what you see, or you're really hard up for a new RTS to play, you'll probably enjoy it. But with so many other absolutely excellent games out there, even in the same genre, that I could be playing, I sadly walked away pretty underwhelmed. If you're like me and want something that does more to shake up the RTS model, you might want to check out my review of Golem Gates, which, while flawed, does exactly that. Or for a spot of non-real-time strategy, go check out my review of Into the Breach, which definitely carved out a place for itself last year. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this first 5 review. If you did, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button. If you're looking for games that value your time and don't pad themselves, I'm your guy. Thanks for watching this far, and I'll see you all next week.